Okay, and we're here right now with the Pop Culture Cosmos. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here. Thank you so much for listening and watching us on YouTube, Facebook Live, and wherever you get your podcasts, and also the great radio stations that play us around the world. I want to go ahead and touch on something first that's been really important within the realm of the pro wrestling industry, and that's the speaking out movement that's taken place over the past couple weeks with several wrestlers speaking out about their things that happened as far as sexual misconduct and a lot of that nature, a lot of those delicate subjects that weren't talked about a lot, before in the industry. That is really something now that's at the forefront. And a lot of these companies that we know and appreciate out there, like the World Wrestling Entertainment, All Elite Wrestling, so many others are now taking action on it, and it is just reshaping the industry as we speak. Whether it's allegations or whether it's actual proof or things of that nature, there's still a lot going on when it comes to speaking out movement, and it is now time for an effective change. An effective change is happening. And I want to bring on a great guest right now. He is a professional wrestling referee who's been in the ring with some of these wrestlers that have been named, that have been implicated. He is also one of the great parts and the great hosts of TNT on BTR. You got to check it out today on Blog Talk Radio, part of the Evolution Radio Network, and it's also available in podcast form wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You like one of those extra podcast players that just grabs it from one of those places, it's there too. Check it out. It's TNT on BTR. And I'll tell you what, I have on Steve Cain. And Steve, just so great to have you right here on the program.
Well, Gerald, thanks for having me. This is a big evolving story. I mean, literally, things are happening as we're even talking. To kind of give a little background, last Thursday on our show, we had Lee Walker from Sportskeeda.com, and that was the day that he put out the previously, well, it hadn't been seen for a while, racist post by Chad Lale, aka Jackson Riker. And so we tend to watch the news sources as we're on the air. Excuse me. And as this is going on, all of a sudden, the first notifications of the claims against Jim and Stacy Coronet popped up. And so we're starting to talk about this live as it's happening, literally across on Twitter and that, including the pictures that have been posted. And so then by that evening, Speaking Out started trending, and we started watching it. I was not originally going to put my solo podcast, which I do on Friday nights, also on BTR, called Live from the Dean's Den, on for another few weeks. But as I saw this, it's like, okay, no, this cannot be ignored. And so went on, and for like the entire hour plus that I was on the air, there were constantly things going on. It kept going through the weekend. All of a sudden, the Joey Ryan accusations started out. Then Marty Skrull and Dave Christ. Then you've got all this stuff. And when you mention talking about people who have been named, who I've actually been in the ring with, unfortunately, as the list started popping out, one guy who I've been really good friends with over the years, Chris Chavis Tatanka, his name came out in this, and that really upset me because I've known Chris since the 1990s. We've been really close. In fact, when I was doing a public access TV show at the time that Owen Hart passed away, Chris was one of my background sources for information about Owen outside of the ring and that. And then to see that they're accusing him of being involved in, we'll say, shameful activities. I don't even want to name the crime that he's charged with because it disgusts me so much, and that, and just seeing all this stuff. As I put it in the description for our show tonight, the people that we have watched and considered heroes for all these years now suddenly turn out that they might actually be the villains.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've got a list right here, a courtesy of Ringside News. Again, there's a lot of names. Some of them people know out there, the general public. Some of them they don't know. I just want to
Right.
go ahead, before we go and tie into this, into something that I wanted to talk to you about. First off, I want to thank you again for joining me.
My
It was
pleasure.
to tell you what a difficult subject this is, and I was telling this to my friend Noe Fine, who I had on earlier. This is something that a lot of people. I reached out to a lot of different places to try and get someone to come on the show to talk on this subject. I can get a lot of people to come on this show to preview WrestleMania, to preview the Royal Rumble, for up to dates on pro wrestling news, but to come on this show at a time where it's really needed for the industry, and people just kind of hesitated on that, didn't give me any feedback or didn't listen to me, and you're the only one that did. And I truly appreciate you doing that, taking time. I don't know if that says a lot about the other people, but it certainly says about the quality that you have in going ahead and speaking on the subject. I want to go ahead and get away from that a little bit and talk about the people involved. Big names, small names: Jim Cornette, Matt Riddle, Velveteen Dream, Austin Theory, Darby Allin, Mike Quackenbush, Marty Scurll, Icarus, the Knight Family, Rich Cotlato, David Starr, Dave Christ, Martin Zaki, Sammy Guevara, Rob Feinstein, Will Ospreay, Chino Reyes, Dan Moff, Mark Haggerty, Kirk White, Aaron Epic Russell, Aaron Epic, Aaron Epic, Russell Payne, Chasen Rice, Jimmy Havoc, Trent Seven, Mark Perry, Wolfgang Day, Mark Paz Perry, Dave Lagana, Jordan Devlin, Jack Gallagher. I mean, the list is going on and on. Congo Kong, Bull James, Travis Banks. These are names that, again, a lot of people may not be aware of out there as far as the general public, but there are some names like Matt Riddle, Jim Cornette. Some of these names are very prominent in the industry right now, and a lot of it has been leading to, like in the case of Jack Gallagher and some others, they've been fired and terminated from their jobs from World Wrestling Entertainment, All Elite
Correct.
Wrestling, the NWA, Impact, Ring of Honor, Shikara, which is actually shut down as an organization
Yeah.
as a whole because of this, Progress, and WXW, just to name a few. This has infected an entire industry, and the only thing that I could gather is when I'm hearing all these names and hearing all the stories, and this is something you would be more familiar with than I am, I'm seeing the equation, or the thing that I'm seeing the most common denominator is that a lot of this happened on the independent circuit.
Yes.
So I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Right, and that is a lot of what we're seeing. We're hearing these stories. I mean, you mentioned Congo Kong. I know Congo Kong quite well. In fact, actually, I had Congo Kong working for me back in the day in a independent promotion here in the central part of the state of Illinois when he worked under the name of Osiris. And when I read the account of the young man who was not only sexually harassed, but also basically, for all intents and purposes, robbed by Steve Wilson, Congo Kong. And I'm going to be going on him tonight on our show. I it was hard pressed for me not to want to throw my phone when I was reading this, because it ticked me off to no end. He's trying to say this is the way that it was taught, and that no. I come very old school. My trainers worked for Vern Gagne and the AWA. That was not taught. That was not old school training. That's just him being a jackass.
Okay, but I mean, we're seeing a lot of these from female wrestlers that are in the industry. We're also seeing, like you said, from a lot of people. In fact, there's been on the other end, it's indicated as far as situations where there's been issues of people being drugged. There's issues of
Yep.
just like you said, sexual misconduct that's out there, and
Well,
you
Keith
know,
Lee, I don't know if you're aware of this one. He made a
yeah,
post. Apparently, he was given Rohypnol one night by a woman, and woke up the next morning in a hotel room totally naked. You know, and this is Keith Lee. I mean, Keith Lee is a freaking monster.
he goes
And
what
this
320, 350.
three, yeah, three about 320, 330, and about 6'4". And if this
Current
can happen,
NXT North American champion.
right, right. And if this can happen to him, it can happen to anybody.
And it's very troubling indeed. But like I said, a lot of this happened within the period of time when most of these individuals were working on or at or in and around the independent circuits.
Right,
And before I get into that question, I wanted to ask you, and we're obviously seeing the effects of it again. Sammy Guevara, Darby Allin, just a lot of people that are now being looked at. David Lagana, who is ahead of the NWA, he's been
right,
terminated. Mike Quackenbush, his actual entire organization, Shikara, has been shut down because of the
right.
accusation. Marty Scurll, there's some decent names in there, and Matt Riddle, who may or may not have a future with the WWE. It seems to be on a very tenuous basis right now. There's denials
Right.
going out. Jack Gallagher was terminated by the WWE. I mean, we're seeing all these ramifications come down on it. But again, it leads me to the question that I have to you is, does something need to be done on an independent grassroots level? I know WWE and AEW, and one of the things I said to Noah was that I think that the WWE and AEW, now that they're in a higher status, need to go ahead and do more extensive background checks on the wrestlers that they bring in. So shame on them if they're not aware of this before they bring on them. But I understand that the local independent scene can't do that to the extent that these larger companies can. What can change with the independent wrestling scene that can prevent at least some of these incidents from either happening or being, out there on social media?
Well, actually, really, it can be more enforced than you think. Okay. Now, when I think about this, I think about how back in the day, back even when I started in the '80s, the industry policed itself. If you were messing around with somebody's wife or some underage girl, it got handled either in the locker room, or there was a shoot and a stretch done out in the ring to you. So that it was handled. As the years have gone by, and you know an industry that I had to fight to get my way into, now it's almost like missions on Halstead Street in Chicago. There's like a wrestling school on every corner, and I should use air quotes when I say wrestling school, because a lot of these guys um, haven't learned even the most basic psychology, and yet they're turning around. They're supposedly teaching other people, and they're running quote unquote federations where they're booking themselves as champion, and that um, with the way the internet is now, and that you can find out real easy, because we've done this with our show. We have found sex offenders that were working for various promotions, and we called them out. Our show isn't afraid of controversy, let me tell you. I mean, we did 2 nights on Hardcore Road Trip and a few other things that I won't get into right now. But the promoters now, all you have to do is you can check a sex offender database of whatever state the worker is coming from, and you can find out, because that's actually what happened from what I've read in one promotion. They got the information from a sex offender database, and they canceled that guy's booking right then and there. So it's just it's due diligence. It's doing the work. If a good solid promoter will do the work, then there's going to be less possibility of these type of incidences occurring farther in the future. But we've got a lot of work to do. My good friend Bill After wrote a book called "Is Wrestling Fixed? I Didn't Know It Was Broken." Um, I hate to say it, but right now wrestling's broken, and we've got to figure out how to fix it.
Couldn't agree with you more on that, Steve. It is something. I think that was probably the best statement in line right now about the pro wrestling industry that you could probably say, because there's so many things that need to be going on, and there's so many changes that need to be made. And someone who has been a fan since the 1970s, it's somebody that it's an industry that I dearly love and always will have affection for. But you're right. I mean, there's always been stuff that's gone on behind the scenes when it comes to professional wrestling. There's always been, you know, I mean, come on. You got when you have one of the most popular shows right now is relating to the industry is Dark Side of the Ring. I mean, it sells itself, but it's gotten to the point where in a modern world where social media is now such a prevalent part of our life, and things can get out there, and things, you have to conduct yourself in a certain manner, in a certain way, because if you don't, as an independent wrestler, it can haunt you going forward. And we're seeing it when you go and migrate to a larger organization. Those things bite you hard. And for instance, like let's say Joey Ryan, with the several allegations that are out against him,
Right.
his career's over and done with Impact Wrestling. I mean, there's just so many other individuals out there that are now being affected by this because of the mistakes they have made in the past, now
Right.
coming back to haunt them. It's about how they carry themselves in an independent wrestler in an independent forum is going to affect the way that they're caring about themselves later on going forward.
Right. And then also, too, when you look at a lot of these guys, and this has been one of my criticisms of the industry in the recent years, a lot of these guys didn't come up through the independents. A lot of these guys, especially in WWE, are getting pulled from football, bodybuilding, other sports, and that. They're not going up through the system and learning the etiquette, learning how to conduct themselves in a locker room, the basic things that oh, guys like myself were taught from day one, and they're just not being given that. They're basically handed dressing room doors on a silver platter. They're walking in and being treated like big stars when they haven't made 8-hour car rides each way to go to a little one horse town and that.
Absolutely. I mean, like you said before, I mean, it's almost been romanticized to an extent, but it is true. All the stories that people have, all the road stories that have been long talked about by the wrestlers of the 70s, 80s, 90s, and so forth, when the regionals were really hot back in the day. And even now, to the extent now that you see some of the wrestlers, like you said, they pick them out, like the WWE and AEW from, especially WWE, from different facets of
Right.
life, different facets of sports, MMA, things of that nature, where they don't have the type of background, and they basically send them to the development center, and there you go from there. And it's going to be like a touch and go whether or not they're going to be able to go ahead and make it in the industry or not, because they
Hmm.
think they have this fresh face in the industry and can apply their talents and athleticism there in that realm, as opposed to maybe grabbing someone from the independent scene. But then again, they do have also, as we see on the rosters of AEW and WWE, quite a bit of independent wrestlers as well. So I will tell you this, it's just something that the industry now needs to make effective change for going
Right.
forward. It's something that we have to see as far as from the smaller promoters, like you said, have to go ahead and now be wary of, as well as the larger promotions have to do more extensive background research into the type of people that they bring on, because the PR nightmares, as you can see right now with the Speaking Out campaign, can really have quite the backlash. And it's something that definitely the professional wrestling, it's been a wake-up call, and I'm glad it finally came.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's difficult to have to deal with it as a wrestling person, and that. But I'm hoping that somehow, eventually, because my broadcast partner, who's also my promotional partner, because we do a wrestling promotion together, we were talking about that earlier today, and we were talking about, okay, we go into this little town, we're gonna want to put on a show, and we go to the local restaurant and say, hey, how would you like to sponsor professional wrestling? And they see all this stuff that's been going on about these various wrestlers, and you know they're going to probably laugh in your face before they throw you out the door. That's where we're at right at this very second.
That's where we're at indeed. Once again, I'm speaking to Steve Cain. He's of the great show that you got to check out right now. It's TNT on BTR. You can check it out upcoming on the Evolution Radio Network on Blog Talk Radio, or you can check it out in podcast form. Once again, that is TNT on BTR. You can check it out today wherever you get your podcasts. And before we head on out, I want you to go ahead and tell everybody, especially professional wrestling fans out there, pro wrestling fans like me, of course, why people need to check out TNT on BTR and why it's such a great show.
Well, we talk about, of course, the latest current wrestling news, and obviously, we're not afraid to step on toes, pull punches, or anything like that. We've covered some of the most controversial happenings in our business. We were the ones that exposed a wrestling promotion that had children in the ring wrestling in front of paying people. We covered the infamous hardcore road trip where guys such as Gregory Iron and Rhino were left stranded without paydays or transportation back to the States. We tackle the subjects that a lot of other shows are afraid to tackle. Then we do get light. We have some great interviews. We have some excellent guests and that. But the nice thing is we're flexible. If something pops up, we'll take it and we'll run with it, and we'll charge head on like the old expression goes, a bull in a china shop.
Well, there you go. Can't beat that right there. Once again, it's TNT on BTR. Check it out on all podcast formats. Then also check it out on the Evolution Radio Network. That's going to be available on Blog Talk Radio, and you can get that right there. Again, it's TNT on BTR.
Live in about 30 minutes.
Well, there you go. Again, got to check it out right now. I know you got a show coming up. Again, Steve, I appreciate on such short notice talking about this important issue where, like you said, a lot of these other shows don't want to cover. They don't want to tread on that space. It's very tenuous right now for the industry, but I see some positive changes going forward.
I do too, and I hope so, and I hope that they are rather quickly. I would love to see that happen. I'd love to see our business get healed and back on its feet sooner rather than later.
You and I both. Well, I'll tell you what, Steve, it's been so great having you here. Cannot thank you enough. And I want you anytime, you're welcome. You're welcome to come back on down. The red carpet's open to you. Anytime you want to stop back on by, let us know right here at the Pop Culture Cosmos.
You got it,